Okay, greetings, my people. 14 May 2024. I left off last night. I was doing a biochar burn. Biochar burn is the process that we go through to make this product right here. This is biochar. It's charcoal. I guess the best way to define it, it's a carbon-based material. So it's charcoal that's made in an oxygen-deprived environment. I guess that's a good way to explain it. So this charcoal has nothing in it except carbon. And, you know, I don't have any way of testing that, but when I pick it up and put a little pressure on it, snap, it goes. There's no wood left in here. This was all wood that I used this time. So I came out first thing and I lifted the inner retort out and dumped it on here. This is an old hammer mill, and I don't use the air pump on it. I just use the hammer mill, and then we took a panel off on the bottom of it, and it drops down, the ground biochar drops down underneath. And to make this go round and round, we have a PTO shaft. And this hammer mill was actually designed to work with a belt, but I put a spline shaft on there, welded a spline shaft on. And so what we have here is an old hammer mill that we're turning. Does a really nice job. And then it falls down into this sled left over and comes out in a nice ground fashion. This is what I ground up last night. And it's about the consistency of, say, coffee grounds, I guess. Now, that's a pretty good consistency in my opinion for what I'm doing with it. So we make a lot of biochar. A lot of it's going to go into that compost pile right there. That's where I compost. I'm going to put it in there, and then that's going to get spread this spring. So I'd like to put in quite a bit in there. So doing 2 burns a day is not too difficult. If I'm not making a video, I just turn the barrel upside down. I changed this a little bit. I put this overhead in this weekend, and it makes it easier to lift the barrels up and then rail them over and then drop them straight in. And the way we were doing it before, because the barrels are heavy, they're probably 300 pounds. We were lowering them in with the front end loader, and you really can't see what you're doing, and it's kind of dangerous when you have 2 people there. So this way here, you know, my kids can do it, and there's no danger of somebody's going to get a barrel dropped on them. So I have that I just made. This came out this morning. I just dumped the barrel in there, and I can dump that all by hand because once it's charred off or gassed off, it's pretty light. I can lift that whole barrel up. It's no more than about 50 pounds then. You saw last night all of that gas coming off and lighting, and it's pretty impressive to see at night. And the vessel that we made it in, the retort, is none the worse for wear. That one's burned probably 50 times. I got that from my wife's uncle. He gave it to me 10 years ago, and we were going to build a wood stove out of it. Never did, and now it's perfect for this. Perfect. The part of the setup that's consumable are the barrels. So these barrels, you can get 25 burns out of them before they're just so thin that when you lift them up, they'll just tear. and then they become a good burn barrel or a scrap metal barrel or something like that, and then you can take them to the scrap yard. So we're going to do this grind right now. I'm going to throw another barrel in and get it lit off because I got plenty to do. I'm going to do a bone burn today. So if you're in the animal butchering business too, if you do have that as a facet on your homestead, you're going to generate a lot of bone. And you know, sometimes the dogs find it and they pull it up by the back of the house and they gnaw on it and stay happy. And that's good, but eventually that bone has got to be dealt with. You can put it in the compost pile. It has to be a very hot pile in order for it to take it down. And we do sometimes, but now I'm finding it better to make bone char out of it. Whole lot better to make bone char. Because I can just accumulate it in a pile, let it kind of dry out in the sun, and then put it in a barrel with some wood, and it chars off the same as wood. And I don't know a lot about this really. I'm just kind of been into it for a few years, but there are different applications. I mean, there's people out there that bone char is the holy grail of biochar. I think people who raise roses, you know, and it's very tough to get because there's not a lot of people that make biochar. So I've got a bone pile out by the junkyard that's huge, and I'm going to start bringing it in and getting that charred off. So I'll get back to you today and show you what that looks like after it comes through. All right. Okay, so this is that process happening. See the PTO shaft turn in there? Now some do-gooder will tell me, you know, that should have a shroud on that, Mark. Yeah, I know. But it's just a couple minute process once this baby's turning. One thing I didn't tell you is you gotta inoculate this biochar, which means you have to charge it. You see it dropping out under there? This is what I've already ground in just a few minutes. As I was singing the theme song from the Beverly Hillbillies. So it's just a couple minute process to grind. So usually I will accumulate quite a bit of it. And then by the time I have the tractor hooked up and everything and I'm going, but here's what's coming out the bottom. Would you look at that? Now this stuff is not hot. It actually would be a lot more dusty if it was not inoculated. And so what do I inoculate it with? I make a barnyard tea, or I don't know, somebody coined the phrase at one point, barnyard kombucha. And that's just take a feed sack and fill it with a bunch of things. That's a whole nother subject, but like compost and some stuff that's really high in bacterial content, and then put it in a black barrel, let it sit in the sun so it gets nice and stinky. And then when I put the fresh biochar on the grinder, I'll wet it down a little bit. Otherwise, it's a big black cloud. And that way when it comes out, it's inoculated with that microbiology. And it's kind of safe in there. You know, there's a good place for it to live. So that's actually a little bit moist. And I'll just be putting this stuff I'm making for the Homestead Conference this coming weekend. So we're going to bring some with us and see if people want it. Okay, anyone can farm.